Welcome into another edition of The Session with Londa and David. My name is David Austin.
I'm Londa Sherwood-Austin. Welcome back.
I'm glad that we're doing this show today, Londa, because it's our big Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day.
I guess it is, yeah.
I don't really understand the distinction with the holiday, by the way. I think people were upset because Christopher Columbus was being honored for discovering America.
There's a lot of controversy. We're not here to get into the controversy of it.
I think
enjoy your day off.
Indigenous Peoples Day, though, is pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And Columbus Day was my whole life until right this minute, so I don't understand what's going on.
You know, the world evolves, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So it's a little controversial, which I enjoy, which is why I'm so excited to be doing the program on this day. The Session with Londa and David is a business podcast that's focused on the three things that are most important in our day-to-day lives. What are those, Londa?
Restaurants, retail sales, and, of course, real estate. And then we get off in the weeds. From time to time.
You say that, but really what we do is we talk about what's happening in our lives, and that all relates because if your life is going in some odd direction, you're going to have odd results in your business life, and that's kind of what I want to talk about this morning. All right. I want to talk about how personal identity is so important to success in sales and in life.
Okay.
And I remember a time in my career when I was tasked to hire someone that I deemed not to be a good hire.
Okay.
But the owner of the company said, well, if you don't hire this person, we won't be able to get their spouse, who's the real person we want to hire. So this is kind of, it just goes with the territory. We have to do that. And I said, well, if we hire this person in a capacity that is not front-facing to the community, I think the person will be in a much better role to succeed than to not be in a front-facing job because they were having some identity crisis issues.
Okay.
So they were unsure of who they wanted to present to the world.
Okay.
And it's hard to be your authentic self if you feel inauthentic.
You're not wrong.
You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
So we talked last week about a motivational speaker that we enjoy. His name's Martine Cleaves. And one of the things he says is get your mind right and keep your grind tight. And I think that is exactly what he's talking about. If you go into work with something else on your mind, including who you think you are, or being unsure of who you are, you're not going to be as productive. What are your thoughts on that?
That's for me, that's a deep well, right? So get your mind right is such an easy concept.
Sure.
For people who don't struggle in their mind.
Okay.
People like me, whose brain is like, the only thing I can liken it to is like being on the spin cycle of a washing machine. Take that idea of like it's swirling all the time. And then if you saw the movie A Beautiful Mind, I think it was called, and you know the scene where he's doing the, is it mathematical computations on the window?
Uh-huh.
And it's just messy. There's stuff everywhere, and there's lines, and there's numbers and letters don't belong in math. and it's all over. And if you aren't familiar with that, look it up on YouTube and watch it. Because if you take that window and his kind of frantic state, and you couple it with a washing machine on a spin cycle, that's my brain a lot of the time.
Interesting.
It's just the input. I don't send me your emails and I don't need your phone calls. I already know I probably need Adderall, okay? Because my brain is so loud all the time, which is one reason why I crave peace and quiet. And I love, I don't mind being alone. When I'm driving in the car, I often have nothing playing because quieting my brain is not an easy thing to do. So, and I've talked a lot about there are things I have to do first thing in the morning to get my mind right, as you're talking about.
Sure.
Easier said than done for some people. However, there's no excuse for not making forward progress because we live in an information age.
Okay.
You have no excuse for not making progress in your life. And let's just, on this particular issue of getting your mind right, if you're overwhelmed or you're depressed or you're anxious or you're insecure or you're whatever it is, there are a million resources. Google is free.
Right.
So I would say for some of us, you hear that, get your mind right and keep your grind tight. And you're like, boom, and you're laser focused. That's all it takes. But for some of us, we've got to unpack a few things before our mind is right and we can focus on things, right?
That's right. Yes.
And so I actually am going to give a book recommendation, which I don't often do.
Okay.
I'm reading a book right now called The Mountain Is You. I don't remember the author. It doesn't matter. Look up The Mountain Is You. Some lady. And it's about overcoming self-sabotage. And for those of you like me that are watching or listening, you're welcome. Do not start this book unless you are ready to look at yourself.
Okay.
Because it will make you.
So it's not a book for me.
Well, if you want to grow,
I don't want to grow.
Then it is a book for you.
I do want to grow, but I don't want to do it through introspection.
Well, you have to.
I want to look at relational data. I want to look at other sources of information and improve and tweak things that need improvement and tweaking. What I don't want to do is sit down and wonder what's wrong with me. I don't have that interest. It's not that kind of personal development, the shadow work. That takes a level of introspection that I don't care for.
So, I know that it's a bit triggering for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you could probably do some work around that. But I don't want to keep repeating some of the things I repeat in my life.
Like what?
Right?
Like what?
Well, I had a conversation with someone recently who called me and said, you know me pretty well, and I'm having this emotional freak out at times, and it happened in a business meeting, and I don't want it to happen anymore. So what do you think that is? And I recommended this book to this person, and I said, I do the same thing. So let me just be really open. I had an incident recently, excuse me, that got me so upset that I cried nonstop for an hour and a half. I cried so hard, I broke a blood vessel in my face. Mm-hmm. I cried so hard, the whole front of my shirt was soaking wet. Excuse me. I cried so hard and for so long that you finally took me outside, mm-hmm. and it was like 11 o'clock at night, and I laid down on the cold, wet grass just to try to pull my brain out of, I was clearly in an emotional, I don't even know what to call it, spin up. I don't know. And it doesn't happen often.
Sure.
But when it does happen, it's terrible. And I don't want to do that anymore. So in order to not do that anymore, I have to do some digging.
Okay.
And like an onion, peel back the layers of, okay, what triggered that?
Sure.
I peel back that layer. I go, okay, is that it, or is there something underneath that? And I peel back that layer, and I peel back that layer, and I peel back that layer, right? Until I get to the thing, and this is just my process. You don't have to do this, but I get to the thing that I think is like at the center of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ask myself, okay, when's the first time in my life I remember feeling this way? And for me, it was, I was age 3 or 4, and I described that incident that happened to you. And, my brothers helped me up in the barn and then ran off and left me into the hayloft and then ran off and left
pulled
me.
down the ladder, right?
No, they left the ladder, but the ladder didn't go all the way up to the entrance. There was a big drop between the top of the ladder and the cutout window thing, which is why they had to help me, right? So they ran off, and I'm giving a very brief description of what happened, and left me up there 3 or 4 years old, crying, and I felt abandoned, and I felt betrayed, and I felt terrified, and my brain definitely interpreted that as a traumatic incident.
Sure, yeah.
I finally got my way down. That wasn't the worst of it. Stick around. I finally got my way down, and I walked back up to the house from the barn, and I went into the kitchen. My mom's standing there cooking dinner, cigarette hanging out of her mouth, cooking dinner, looking frazzled as can be, because that was her life then. And I start crying. Well, I cried all the way up to the house, and I'm crying, and the boys did this, and they did. And she turned around, looked at me, and said, "Why are you so dramatic all the time? You're fine." And I remember that lodged in my brain as a moment of, I can't trust anyone to take care of me.
Right.
So that gets triggered by certain things. And this recent incident where I cried for an hour and a half, that's what was underneath all of that. So the work that I get to do is I get to really think about what need is not being met.
I gotcha.
And I have a deep need to trust and be trusted. Mm-hmm. And in that moment of my mom, I couldn't trust her to protect me, to help me. I couldn't trust my brothers. And in that moment a few weeks ago, I felt like that person, I could no longer trust that person. There was a big piece of trust was broken.
Sure.
And so now I'm left with, okay, I have all these pieces to this puzzle. And so I know now what am I going to do about it? And I'm at that part in the book of what do we do about it?
Okay.
And so, because I don't want to repeat this, it's not pleasant to lose my shit for an hour and a half. And it's embarrassing, and it's, I hesitate to even share it, but at the same time, it's like, this is real. This is the human experience, right? And if I don't deal with this, then I could be sitting with a client and get triggered.
A word, a sound, a scent. There are all kinds of things that can trigger those sorts of emotions.
And if I haven't worked through the need that little Londa didn't have met, and how and work around healing that little piece of me, right? So that today's Londa can function appropriately in society.
Right.
If I don't do that work, then I'm going to keep repeating this. And you can tell yourself all the positive affirmations. You can go to the gym. You can do, whatever you do to pump yourself up and get right. And you can tell yourself a million times, you're never going to do that again. But until you peel back the layers and you figure out what the real need is,
right?
What need is not being met right now, then you're never going to actually change the behavior. You can only will yourself to change so much without going back. And it's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken arm. If you don't do some digging and figure out what need is not being met. So for me right now, and I'm just partway through the book, and
sure,
I'm figuring some of this out. And so I'm sorry I don't have exact step-by-step solutions. But for me right now, the thing is, when I start to feel myself feel that familiar feeling, it's a well-worn path in my brain, right? Then I want to be able to stop and say, okay, what need do I have right now that's not being met?
I gotcha.
And how do I get that need met? And it might be that if I could rewind to that incident a few weeks ago, maybe I could have said, did this happen because you don't trust me? do you no longer have trust in me or in this part of our relationship? Maybe I could have said that. I don't know. This is really hard for me because now I feel like I can't trust you. Can we talk about that?
Right.
I'm hoping to get to that place where I can somehow have a dialogue about it. I'm hoping it's the next chapter in the book. I don't know. I just got to the part where she's like, so what do we do with this? And I was like, yeah, what do we do with it? And I had to pause it. I listen to it on Audible. I don't read. No, I'm reading a different book called Believe It by Jamie Kern, I think is her name, the founder of It Cosmetics. So I'm reading that hardback book, and then I'm listening to this other one.
And the author of that book started her career as a local news personality in Tri-Cities, Washington.
Yeah, which is crazy.
And now has a multi-million-dollar international makeup brand.
Yeah.
It Cosmetics.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
Ellen May gave me that. Ellen May?
Yeah.
Yeah. Gave me that book to read.
Nice.
So.
I wonder if she knows her.
Like a year ago, she gave it to me, and I'm,
Now you're reading
sometimes you pick up a book and you put it down because it's not the right time.
Right.
And then I just pulled it off the shelf the other day, and I picked it up, and it's the right time. That's something that I want to talk about. If you're like me, it's okay you don't have it all figured out today because maybe it's not the right time for that particular thing.
That's true.
Things happen all the time. Don't force trying to fix or repair or heal a part of yourself that's not ready.
See, this is going a lot deeper than I anticipated. What I was going to talk about is when I got my divorce, my identity was as a husband and a father. And all of a sudden, my identity was kind of
ripped out from under you.
That's how it felt.
Yeah.
It's not true. I was a husband. I'm a husband again. I still am a father. My identity really wasn't taken from me.
But it sure feels like it.
But boy, it felt like it. And that was a gut punch. And I got to tell you, I was ineffective in sales during that period and had to make some major life changes to get myself into a better mindset.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, thank God my employer at the time was generous and caring and, walked me through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I'll always love Guild Mortgage as a company, because when that happened in my life, they rallied around me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that is really, really good.
Yeah.
So what I'm talking about is, in a much less important way than what you've just described for the last 16 minutes.
I'm sorry.
No, it's good. It's fine. Is if you know who you are and why you want to do things, there's nothing you cannot do. And that's really what I'm trying to say. That's the point of this conversation.
And I think that's a really important thing to know, because and the reason I'm going through this at this age is because I never got to be who I was.
Right.
As a child, when you're 3 or 4 and your mother says to you, why are you so dramatic? And you're like, are you kidding me? Like, this is just who I am. I grew up my whole life knowing who I was wrong. I didn't know what was wrong with it, but I knew it was wrong because I was told constantly that it was wrong.
Well,
and then I repeated that pattern.
Sure.
In my first marriage, there was just like this underlying, I know something's wrong with me, but I don't know what it is. But I know based on the behavior of the people around me, it's wrong. And so I'm a little maybe stunted in my growth, right? So now I'm here, well into my 50s and just finally, right before we got together 5 years ago, I was doing this super deep dive with my therapist on learning how to name my feelings. I didn't know. I had ignored my feelings my whole life.
I gotcha.
And there I was in my, late 40s, sitting with my therapist with a freaking feelings wheel. And I'm like, she taught me to like stop and notice and identify what I'm feeling.
I gotcha.
That was a hard thing for me to learn. It was hard to, and I'm not unusual. This is why therapists exist.
Right.
Right? And so for somebody who is just starting to figure it out, it's not unusual that I'm here like going, okay, now what, feelings are clues to your needs. Mm-hmm. And so if you never got to feel your feelings, you never got to identify your needs.
And so your needs were never met.
Your needs were never met. So this is just the last 6-year journey for me of figuring this stuff out. So, think what you want. I mean, this is just where I am. And the thing is, it makes me a much more effective human.
Sure.
Knowing these things about myself. Like I used to get way more triggered in business meetings and different things than I do today. Because I'm more certain of who I am,
right,
and what I'm about, and I'm also way more authentic because I'm finding out who I am.
Right.
When you spend, 45 years of your life just being who you think other people want you to be, it's a big learning curve.
Well, that's an interesting way to describe your persona, right? You were
Sure.
being who everyone else wanted you to be. I've never had a thought like that because when I was a little kid, when I was dramatic, my mother would say, "Oh my God, you're being so dramatic. Do you want to write like a one-act play about this?" That's literally the kind of stuff she would say to me when I was being overly dramatic. Like, we could make some hay here. We could do something with this, right? And that's just different. It's different. And we've talked about it here on the program, your book, and where you talked about being a dream keeper and a dream killer.
Right.
It's exactly that. And I feel lucky that I had someone during my formative years who was so excited to find out what I was interested in and what I was thinking, and to tell me what they were thinking and what they were interested in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's a gift. This continued, of course, through my childhood. And I don't know why, my mom's been gone a long time, so you don't get to ask her these things, right? I wish I could, but because I'm sure there had to be stuff going on with her, why she couldn't,
People born in the 40s were stoic. They were a different people than we are today.
Yeah.
Emotions weren't super important then.
Yeah.
Survival was.
I loved writing, and I wanted to be a writer, and I got into WSU. I was very excited about that because, Edward R. Murrow and all that.
Right, yeah.
And when I told my mom, I was so excited, and I said, "Mom, I got into WSU," and she goes, "You just want to go there because you want to party." So that dream killer kind of idea, it went through my whole life, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
And I didn't pursue it.
Having a parent who's...
I didn't pursue it because she said that.
Having a parent who's both a rule setter and a cheerleader is possible.
Yeah.
You can have someone who gives you guidelines that are finite, and you do not go outside of this area.
Yeah.
These.
Well, I call it this. I call it freedom within boundaries.
Right.
Right.
And on the other hand, you can also be someone who's so excited about their kids' lives that you are there to cheer them on every step of the way. Mm-hmm. You can be both kinds of people. You don't have to be one or the other.
Right.
And, we talked on the show last week about some mom guilt that you feel. And I got to tell you, you were just like that. You were a rule maker and a cheerleader to your kids.
I tried to be.
You were. And I think that's beautiful and lovely. Somebody asked me on one of our TikTok shorts where you were talking about feeling some mom guilt, what'd she do to the children? And the answer is nothing. They were raised in a very conservative environment where order was more important than feelings. That was my response to...
Yeah, that's accurate.
You know what I mean? And
yeah,
you can have order and care about feelings too. And that's okay.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I think all this to say, this is maybe why growth is one of my core values.
Sure.
Because if I'm not growing, I'm dying, you know? And I heard something last night. Gwen Stefani said it. She said, don't waste your pain.
Right.
And man, it hit me deep. Like,
You got teary-eyed.
I did.
When you were watching The Voice on NBC.
Yeah. I mean, this is what I'm saying when, like, you don't force your growth, it'll come. If you're in a growth mindset, growth will come. If
Yes.
you're always looking for it and you're always open to it and you're always seeking it, it will come, and different pieces of it come at different times. And who thought sitting watching The Voice,
Right.
and, you know, Gwen Stefani makes some offhanded remark to the person who was singing, don't waste your pain. And it hit me like a therapist had said it to me, you know? And I thought, man, that's right. Because it's terrible when you have pain in your life, in your past, maybe. It's a terrible thing to overcome. But what's worse than having pain in your past is not putting it to use.
Right.
Wasting it in your future.
Sure.
Don't waste your pain.
Right.
So maybe that's why I talk so much about, you know, my life. And I'm so open now because I think I don't want to waste it. There were a lot of painful things. I don't want to waste that. So come along on the journey with me and let's all get better together. I don't know.
It's really interesting how you described the way your mind works is like the Beautiful Mind scene with the numbers flipping and spinning and the window, and then a washer always moving, agitating as you go. My mind does not work like that at all.
Oh, I know.
You know, it's interesting.
I know.
You know, I'm fascinated by the way other people think and the way other people perceive things. It's fascinating to me. I don't think anything's cooler to me than that because I only know how I see things, right? And to hear you describe how your mind is always going, my mind is more like a calculator. Here's what I mean. I solve problems instantly in my head and then move on to the next thought. I don't ruminate on anything. And that's, you know, made me really good at trivia, right? Yeah. But that's it. So,
Yeah.
and a problem solver in my business.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
If there's a problem, I know how to overcome it, and it doesn't take me days and days and
Right.
days. It hits me, and there it is.
And I struggle to be fully present. I shouldn't say I struggle. I work at being fully present in any given moment. There's 100 things spinning in my brain. So if I'm having a conversation with you and I'm really engaged, know that you're important to me and that I'm really working at being engaged with you because I'm thinking about that repair we got to do on the RV. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's a million, and I'm wondering like, how did Hayden's haircut go today? Hayden's our granddaughter. And I, you know,
Sure.
you know, I mean, it's just,
And because I grew up with a mother who was really into debate, often in conversations, while the person was speaking to me, I would think of my response.
don't I know it?
I don't do that now because of rapport business training. I was not an active listener before.
You do, but maybe not as often.
Well, if I'm in a debate, that's different than if I'm in a conversation, because in a conversation, I really want to hear what the other person has to say. I'm no longer actively thinking about a response. And for years and years and years and years, that's what I was doing. I was listening for key phrases that I could then turn. You know what I mean? I don't think that way anymore. And it's because I went to this stupid rapport leadership training course in
wasn't
Henderson,
stupid.
Nevada, and they made me break a board and break down crying because I found out, this was 20 years ago, that I did not truly listen to people.
Yeah.
I listened for cues and then responded. And that's not good. I didn't know that was a thing. That's as introspective as I've ever been in that course right there. And they do it. It's kind of manipulative. They break you down. Of course it
is. They get you into you say it's manipulative and they break you down. What they do is they help you bring yourself into a state of openness so that you can receive the information that's being given.
Yeah, it's like boot camp. They break you down so they can build you up. Not my favorite thing, but that I learned a huge lesson that day.
And that's why you go to those things, right? So you can get out of your normal routine into a different kind of space and state where you can learn different things.
That's exactly right. And it was weird because most of the people in the class were people that I have interacted with since, because they were in this region of the world, which is interesting. The one guy that I haven't talked to since was Carl of Carl's Jr. fame. He was there. And hearing his story was really, really cool.
Yeah. We haven't talked about restaurants, retail sales, or real estate
Okay,
today.
Here's the restaurant review nobody asked for. This week, we were thinking about where we could go have lunch, and we went to a little place in Richland, Washington that I've talked about for years and years and years, and you actually said to me, this is the single best lunch I've ever had at a restaurant. Tell us about it.
Am I supposed to say where I was?
You can.
Okay.
It's the restaurant review nobody asked for.
We went to Fat Olives in Richland, and I go get their butternut squash soup before they take it off the menu. I am very picky, if you hadn't already figured it out by listening to this or watching this show or knowing me, about restaurants. I'm very, very particular about food in general, because I have a delicate tummy. And so this butternut squash soup, I got it thinking, whatever. I'm not going to like it probably, but whatever. It was the best. It was so good.
I got it too, and am shocked that it was good. And I got it because I didn't want to have one of their salads.
Yeah, it was delicious. So if you're nearby Richland, Washington, jump into Fat Olives and get that butternut squash soup if you can.
So good.
Yeah.
And you had a club sandwich that was perfect, you said.
It was so good.
The bread was toasted, but not over toasted.
But not too toasted.
Right.
Like, it was perfect, and it was fat.
And it didn't cut up the inside of your mouth.
No, it was.
That's what I don't like about a club sandwich.
Okay, and the only thing they put on it is mayo. Thank you. Quit trying to fancy up the club sandwich with some kind of weird aioli or some kind of avocado something.
Right.
No, we just want mayo on the club sandwich.
Right.
We just want mayo. Keep it simple.
It was a turkey club, I think.
It had turkey, ham, and bacon.
Oh, there you go.
So good.
The trifecta.
Yeah.
The power trio.
Yeah. So I ate half of it yesterday. I ate half of it today.
Oh, fun.
It was great.
All right, there you go. So that's the restaurant review nobody asked for. Fat Olives in Richland, Washington. What else do you want to talk about?
I don't know. Anything new in real estate you want to discuss?
Well, the only thing new in real estate is people are buying houses.
Yeah.
And, thank you, Fed, for advertising to the world that rates were getting lower by 0.5 point. Now, that didn't immediately impact mortgage rates. They came down in anticipation of that announcement weeks earlier. So we've seen a little bounce up in interest rates, but we're still at a better place than we'd been for the last 2 years. I mean, we're a 1.25 points better than we were 2 years ago at this same time. So now is the time. If you're interested in buying a house, now is the time.
And I was just looking at the market update for available homes in our area, in the 3 cities, main cities, Kennewick, Pasco, and Richland, Washington. And the inventory is still very low. If you're looking for a home that is not new construction, that's a resale home,
right,
under $400,000, if you find something you love, you better write an offer, because there are not enough on the market right now.
And values keep going up. They say when you start to lower the Fed fund rate, there's often some signs of a recession, and there are layoffs and then new hires because it's a little cheaper to do business. All that stuff to say is, if you think houses are going to get less expensive. There is no historical data to pay for that, to show that at all. Recessions do not result in lower housing prices. They do result in lower interest rates, though, and that's a good thing. There you go. Rates are way better than they were 2 months ago, and house values aren't going any lower. So if you want to own a home, today is the day. The Session with Londa and David is brought to you by Sherwood Austin Real Estate Solutions. We help you make all the right moves. Do you want to say anything about that?
Oh, no. Yeah, no. I'm sorry. I thought you were done. You put such a finish on it that I thought you were done. SherwoodAustin.com is your one-stop shop for making all those right moves.
There you go. SherwoodAustin.com will get you to our real estate page. It will get you to my lending page, DavidAustinLoans.com. It will get you to the podcast. So anything you want to know about the Austins, Londa Joanne Sherwood Austin and David Austin, you can find at SherwoodAustin.com. And this has been another edition of The Session with Londa and David. We'll see you again next week. Happy Columbus Day and happy Indigenous Peoples Day. And we have no SARS blankets for you.